from the Idiot Box, where we explore the good, the bad, and the wacky in television. Rob Cates joins me today. He has worked in television for over 35 years. How are you, Rob? Welcome back.
I'm doing well. Thank you. It's great to be back. Thank you very much.
And today we are discussing Comedy at the Edge. It is Richard Zoglin's book, and it explores the revolution in 1970s stand up. The subtitle is How Stand Up in the 1970s Changed America. And there's another book on comedy in the 1970s called I'm Dying Up Here, but that one is specifically more about the Comedy Store, and there's Letterman and Leno. So if you want to learn about the beginnings of how we got into the late night situation and those relationships in the 70s, that is the book to read. This is the book, The Comedy at the Edge is the book to read if you want to know more about how we went from the very staid comedy of the 1950s to something a little more revolutionary and outspoken in the 1970s. And I think George Carlin and Richard Pryor best exemplify that.
hmm Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they were key people in the 70s, and yeah, the book was interesting because it talked about the 70s, but it also kind of touched on the 60s and the 80s a bit. Yeah, the 60s were very different. I mean, it makes me think about there was that series, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And if anybody has
Yes.
watched that, that really talks about comedy in the 1960s. And she was a female comic trying to make it very loosely based on Joan Rivers, I guess. But
Well, that
yeah, that
is
was
more the
really
50s. It's like the late 50s, early 60s.
okay. Yeah, 50s and also, yeah, that's right. But
Because
it
Gordon
was
Ford is Johnny Carson.
Yeah, it was interesting because she got into late night. She was a writer for a late night show. It was very much of a Johnny Carson type of show, and then also that makes me think of Hacks, which is a much
Yes.
current show is on HBO Max, and people really need to check that out with Jean Smart. And she's also kind of like a Joan Rivers type of a character, and she's a comedian who's past her prime, and she's trying to remain relevant in the
Yes.
comedy world. So anything related to the world of comedy, I think is really fascinating. And so that's why, yeah, I mean, I thought this book was good. I need to read the other one that you talked about because I mean, I've always thought that the learning about the history of the Comedy Store is really fascinating because it was owned by Mitzi Shore, the mother of Pauly Shore.
Yes.
People may remember him from MTV and his different crazy movies that he did. And so, yeah, the Comedy Store in LA was really pivotal because, I mean, yeah, so many great people came out of there. And that's where David Letterman got his start. And in the
Yes.
70s, there was that clear throughway to getting into comedy. It was basically Letterman was in Indianapolis and he said,
Mhm.
okay, I need to move out to LA and I need to get on Johnny Carson's show because Johnny Carson was so popular and so good to young comedians. So yeah, so
Yeah.
he moves out to LA and he gets his shot at the Comedy Store. And so I mean that's where Jay Leno got his start. Tom Dreesen, a lot of other people. I mean,
Yeah.
Robin Williams was performing there, Richard Pryor, and Jeff Altman. So I like that part of the book very much, definitely. Richard Zoglin, when he was touching on the Comedy Store, it was really fascinating.
Yes. The one thing about this book that I noticed and surprised me was it focuses on New York. So you get a lot about the improv and Catch a Rising Star, which Catch a Rising Star know about, but I always forget because you hear about the improv and you hear about the Comedy Store. And Catch a Rising Star, the main person who came out of there was Jerry Seinfeld
Yeah,
before he
sure.
went over to the Comedy Store in LA.
Yeah, yeah. You have to talk about New York. I mean,
Yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield had his club there, simply called Dangerfield. So yeah, a lot of the biggest people in comedy, they started on either one of the coasts, New
Yeah, you
York or
have to.
yeah.
If you're a
But
musician, a comedian, go to one of those.
yeah, so and then but also with the comedy store in LA, the thing that was crazy was Mitzi Shore didn't think that she needed to pay people to
Yeah.
perform there, and so then they went on strike, and Tom
Yes.
Dreesen was the strike leader, and they went on strike. They're like, no, we have to get paid, and she just figured, no, it's good, it's good promotion for you, and you really don't need to be paid. You just do your stand up, and that's it. And
That old story in the entertainment industry.
and
Exposure. Exposure
yeah,
doesn't pay the bills.
yeah, yeah, you still have to have money coming in. So, and then I mean, one of the comics, sadly, Steve Lubetkin, he ended up committing suicide because he was really struggling, and he was one of the people who was at the comedy store. But in the midst of the
Yes.
strike and everything, he ended up jumping off a building, and
Right
the
next
note,
door.
yeah, the new note alluded to the fact that he just was struggling and couldn't get work at the comedy store and wasn't getting paid and all that. So but Tom Dreesen is another fascinating character. I mean, somebody who has an interest in him should really check out. He was on the Carson podcast. He was on the Letterman podcast. He was on Late Night Playset, which are all great because I mean his background is fascinating, and he and
It
Letterman have been
is.
fans for decades. And he opened up for Sammy Davis Jr. for a few years. Tom Dreesen did. Then he's better known as opening up for Frank Sinatra for many years. So
Yeah.
he's interesting. It's just yeah, it's fascinating to learn about those people, and I mean a lot of them ended up as regular guests on Letterman show. I mean yeah, Letterman had him on, Jeff Altman and George Miller and some of the other people that they started out. They all started out at the Comedy Store together. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Dreesen, I don't know if I would know who he was if it wasn't for Letterman having him on like twice a year because he's not one of those people who shows up on TV anywhere else because he's mainly a Vegas performer. And
Hmm.
anytime he would come on, it's another Frankie story. I'm
Yeah.
not sure Tom Dreesen knows anyone else other than Frank Sinatra, but that's a whole nother
Yeah, and
thing.
then well, I was talking to somebody at work about we just lost Lonnie Anderson this week, and
Yes.
I was thinking about WKRP in Cincinnati, and there's a tie-in there with Tom Dreesen because he and Tim Reed, who was played Venus Flytrap,
Yes.
he was the DJ, one of the DJs on WKRP. Tom Dreesen and Tim Reed had a comedy team, a comedy duo,
Yeah, the
and they would,
first black and white comedy
yep,
team.
yep. So.
There's
So
definitely a book about that. May
there is.
have it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I remember them on Letterman promoting it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to think about the early days of comedy. And I mean the thing is, and they showed this in Mrs. Maisel, these clubs when they first started
Yeah.
out, they were not just comedy. They were now we think of comedy clubs, and really in the
Yes.
boom of the 70s and into the 80s, they became strictly comedy clubs. But like in Mrs. Maisel, they showed they would have a magician, they would have a musician, they would have a comedian, they would have
Yes.
a juggler, or it was like a variety show sometimes with these clubs. And like I was watching a clip of Buddy Rich on Johnny Carson's show from the 1970s, and
Hmm.
Buddy Rich at that point was talking about, well, my big band and I are going to be performing tomorrow night at the Comedy Store. So they had, yeah, even in the 70s, Buddy Rich was playing his jazz at the Comedy Store, but then
Yeah.
comedy got so big that it became that you would just have these clubs that were strictly designed for comedy.
Yeah, it's crazy to me to think about because now we still have some generic open mics where it's the slam poets and the
Mhm.
musicians with the comedians. But at least where I am in New Jersey, we have comedy open mics, we have comedy clubs. If I'm going to an open mic night, yeah, we have a few of those that are for anyone, but it's like if it's an open mic night, I'm not like I'm going for a specific type of performance. I'm not just going to see whoever decides to take the microphone.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
times have changed.
Yeah. You'll have coffee shops that have open mic nights for comedians, and yeah, comedy has become very popular. And yeah, like I hear about the Bitter End in New York is a place that has been there for decades and decades, and that used to be all kinds of different things. But actually now I hear that they have music there sometimes. But like Woody Allen, that was one of the places that he started in New York back in the '60s, and he was doing his stand up there. And a lot of people may not realize that Woody Allen he was a strong stand-up comic, but of course then he really got into film and his directing and his writing
Yes.
films, and he struggled with a lot of stage fright, so he knew that he wasn't really cut out for being a stand-up comic, but he was very successful with his films.
Right. If you read the Lorne book that came out earlier this year, I believe,
Hmm.
it mentions Lorne Michaels and Hart Pomerantz going to LA to write for Woody Allen with him. And I'm not sure if they ended up using any of his jokes, but
Hmm.
that alludes to his stand-up days.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing his stand-up days were around the time when there was an appearance on What's My Line, where it was Fred Allen, Steve Allen, and Woody Allen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, the three Allens all together.
Right. So the joke was like Fred Allen is Steve Allen's son, and Steve Allen is the father of Woody.
Yeah.
Which like none of them are actually related. I think Steve Allen's the only one whose name is actually Allen.
Yeah. Woody Allen, actually, his real name is Alan Stewart Konigsberg. So yeah,
Yes.
he changed his name significantly.
Right. And Fred Allen, his real last name is something super Irish.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, because that was kind of what he was known for at that time. So there was also what surprised me in the book is how big of a deal Albert Brooks, Richard Belzer, and Robert Klein were in the 70s. Because
Hmm.
Albert Brooks, I tend to think of as one of Letterman's like weirdos, like Andy
Hmm.
Kaufman,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, like you show up and this is what you do. Um, Robert Klein like was one of my dad's favorite comedians, so I grew up with Robert Klein and George Carlin
Hmm.
growing up, and then Richard Belzer, Munch.
Yeah, that's right.
I love Richard Belzer's comedy, but that is not what most people know him for at this point in time. And
Hmm.
as the book goes into his self destructive tendencies, it wasn't like he was going to break into the mainstream as a comedian
Hmm.
um, because of his personality and various quirks.
Hmm.
Um, so with Albert Brooks, they go into he was mostly very conceptual, like Andy Kaufman. Only his difference was he did a lot more film work, from what I
Hmm.
was gathering. I found the clip about the comedy school. Have you seen this with the comedy school
Hmm.
comedy, like the sketch?
Yeah. Yeah, that's on YouTube. Yep.
Yes, it is on YouTube. It's
Yeah.
about 7 minutes. Was it for a show? I want to say it was.
Probably, yeah, probably. But yeah,
Yeah,
and Albert Brooks had a lot of really funny appearances with Johnny Carson, and yeah, people need to check those out. Definitely, I'd highly recommend checking those out. And also
yes.
his brother was Super Dave Osborne, and Super Dave
Yes.
was yeah, so that was a comedy family, and then the father was also a stand-up comedian. So the Einstein family, and Albert Brooks' real name is Albert Einstein,
Einstein, yeah. Oh,
but He went by Albert Brooks for obvious reasons, but
Yes, and it's the famous school for comedians, or is it
okay.
the famous comedian school? I looked it up and then promptly forgot it. The famous comedian school. If you look that up on YouTube, you will quickly find it. Uh, yeah, David Lander is in here, Penny Marshall.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Squiggy and oh my,
Laverne.
Laverne, yes.
Yeah.
And Michael McKean is now in Spinal Tap too.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see how that is. Hopefully that's a funny movie. Yeah.
Yes, don't have anything for Cindy Williams that comes to mind, but we'll round out the
Yeah.
cast.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess we'll go back to Richard Pryor because prior to becoming the Richard Pryor we know, talking about his growing up in a brothel and the drugs and all of that, he would go on shows like Merv Griffin and
Hmm.
Johnny Carson and be this very straight laced comedian that was not at all what we came to know him as, and his life was very messy. So it's definitely a persona when you go up on stage, but it felt more authentic to him when you watch his later material. At least that's my take on it.
Hmm. Yeah. He had yeah, he kind of had to reinvent himself a bit, and even well, and George Carlin did too. I mean, Carlin when he was doing like the hippy dippy weatherman and like in the 1960s and stuff,
Yeah.
he was pretty he was clean cut and straight laced, and then he became a hippie himself like in the 70s and 80s. And I was just seeing there's a clip on YouTube that had just about a week before Johnny Carson retired, George Carlin went on there, and that was his 105th time appearing on Johnny Carson's show. So, yeah,
Wow.
Carson was a big fan of Carlin, and he had him on there an awful lot. Yeah,
And that would
Richard
have
Pryor
been
too.
the entire evolution of
Yeah,
George Carlin.
yeah, yeah, because it was 1992 when Johnny went off the air. Yeah. So, and then another person I was thinking of really that was well, he wasn't big in the 70s, but he gets kind of a flash in the pan. Byron Allen, he was at the
Oh,
comedy store
yes.
in the 70s too, and yeah, and now he's much more known as an entertainment mogul, a very
Yeah,
wealthy
he's a
businessman.
billionaire. We're getting
Yeah,
Comics Unleashed instead
yeah,
since After Midnight was canceled.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I'm
So
trying to figure out how that's going to work because he's paying CBS to air his show like it's an infomercial. It's an interesting business model.
yeah, I don't know, and then yeah, we'll have to see what replaces Stephen Colbert when he goes off. I mean, that'll be another hour that they have to fill. But yeah, looking back to the 70s, I mean, it was him. He was he was only 18 years old. He was just out of high school. Byron Allen was when he performed on Johnny Carson's show, and he was just extremely young. And he had a mother that worked there at NBC Burbank. So as a kid, Byron Allen was like hanging out at NBC Burbank and seeing all the different tapings of the shows. And Johnny Carson knew who he was before
I
he
had
went on
no
the show
idea that that was the
just because
case.
he was there. Yeah, that was a Carson podcast. Anybody with any interest in comedy or late night or any of that needs to check out the Carson podcast because it was fascinating. But yeah, check out the Byron Allen episode of the Carson podcast because he talked about. I saw this. They had a Johnny Carson exhibit at
Mm.
the National Comedy Center, which is in Jamestown, New York,
Yes,
which
the
by the way
Lucy
is yeah,
Museum.
it's the
I've been
hometown
there. We can talk about
Lucy.
that once you finish your thought.
It's fascinating. But anyway, yeah, at the Comedy Center, they had this tribute to Johnny Carson. They had a clip in there that was from Byron Allen, and he said, comedians of my generation have two birthdays, the day they were
Yeah.
born and the day that they first appeared on Johnny Carson's show.
Yes.
That's how pivotal it was. especially in the 70s. I mean, I think really in the 70s, Johnny was at his height of popularity and just such a key person in making or breaking these comedians.
Also, what I lost my thought. Okay, so we'll continue with the Comedy Store. When I was there, I don't know if it's still there. You got to see Carson's curtain and a bunch of memorabilia, which I highly doubt I was supposed to, but I couldn't resist like touching the curtain.
Yeah,
Um, there was also the George Carlin, his notes, because he had files of notes,
yeah,
and that was the main floor. And then there is the blue room, which you have to go
yeah,
down in an elevator. You're not supposed to bring children in there. You
yeah,
walk in, and the first thing you hear is like just someone swearing.
yeah,
And then you look at all this wall of just curse words from around the world, and it's interesting to see some of them what the literal translations are. Others you have a pretty good idea.
yeah. Well, there was a screen when I was there, a big screen playing Sam Kinison, some of
Mm,
his very X-rated material.
right, and if you want to see any of the Friars Club roasts, they're in that
Yeah,
room.
yeah. Yeah, that's a fascinating place. Yeah, it's Western New York. It's south of Buffalo, National Comedy Center. Yeah, anybody who likes museums or especially comedy or the history of comedy and late night and all that really needs to check it out. And yeah, in that same town, since it's the hometown of Lucille Ball, you have
Yes.
Lucy and Desi Museum across town, so you can hit both of those. But it's fascinating.
The Comedy Museum, the Comedy Center is, I found, much more worth it than the Lucy Desi Museum. I found the
Mm,
Lucy Desi Museum to be a bit of a disappointment because they have recreations of the set. You can pay extra to get your photo taken on those. I don't
mm,
remember what it was. And then they don't have much from the actual show.
mhm.
So you just go see Lucy's Mercedes Benz or whatever she drove, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it was disappointing compared to the National Comedy Center because
yes.
yeah, one other thing that they had at the Comedy Center that was really interesting was they had some memorabilia from Andy Kaufman, who I've always found fascinating. And they had a little note that he had put on his door when he was on Johnny Carson show. And evidently he was into meditation. And this note basically said, it was put on Andy Kaufman's dressing room and it said, I am inside meditating. Please do not bother me until it's time to do the show. I need to have my quiet time. And so that was an interesting
Yeah.
insight to Andy Kaufman. Yeah.
And going back to Carson, when you mentioned Byron Allen was like the two birthdays,
Mhm.
Carson was so critical and such a big deal for these comedians who got their first shot on the show that in the case of Jay Leno, he almost didn't get another shot because Johnny was not a fan of him,
Mhm.
which is surprising considering Leno would go on to have a 20 plus year career
Yeah.
on The Tonight Show. But it also provides some insight into why Carson was like, I don't want Leno as my replacement. I want Letterman because Leno only really got a second chance because he was so popular on Letterman.
Mhm.
It, it,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be overstated, but I think it's understated how much of an influence Letterman had on Jay Leno's career. And Leno would never have gotten the Tonight Show if it wasn't for Letterman giving him a national platform.
Yeah. yeah, you watch the appearances of Leno on Letterman's show in the 80s, and yeah, he was really funny. Leno was great, and he had an edge to and a sarcasm to his
Yes.
comedy, and he was just kind of when he
Yeah.
took over for Johnny, a lot of people said, and I think it's true, he kind of just he lost that edge, and he just wasn't as he didn't have that sarcastic type of an approach, and it was just kind of more dumbed down
Yeah, like
or
there was a spark
post.
in his early material where I'm like, oh, like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. And then The Tonight Show, but his attitude with The Tonight Show was like, if someone pays you to give them vanilla ice cream,
Yeah.
you give them vanilla ice cream. I forget the exact quote, but it was something along those lines where it's like, yeah, but do you sell your soul for that? And I don't think Letterman ever did. Sure, he understood there were rules that he was supposed to play by, and by not playing by all of them, he definitely hurt his career in some aspects,
Mhm.
but it was never dumbing down. There is a difference between late night and the late show with Letterman. I think part of that is new channel, new expectations because of the new time slot. And I think part of that's also as he got older, Letterman constantly evolved. So even early late night does not look like year 6 or 7 of late night. It's
Mhm.
not a completely different program, it's still the same person and the same type of comedy, but it changes. But they all do because of the times, and we tend to watch late night hosts for, in a lot of cases, decades at a time. So if you're telling the same, I mean, if Dancing Itos were still what Leno was showing in 2005, we'd all be very confused.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah, and yeah, Letterman went through a metamorphosis too for many other reasons too. There were a lot of outside
Yes.
factors. People thought that maybe post 9/11 he changed a bit.
Well,
People
they
think that
stopped insulting New York in the
well, yeah, oh,
beginning.
definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he had a kid, so after having a kid, some people say that maybe he changed and mellowed out a bit,
He also
but yeah,
filled his gap after Harry was born.
he did. Yeah, yeah, that was kind of a yeah, like a signature look, but that yeah, he changed his teeth and yeah, so Letterman yeah, you can talk forever about the whole Tonight Show thing and Leno versus Letterman, and, but yeah, Letterman he was anti-establishment. He was talking about the pinheads at NBC,
Yes.
and he didn't like management, and so he just. But people liked him for that because he was like an everyman, and he was just down to earth and more relatable. But
Yes.
it didn't earn him any points with the big wigs at NBC, and
No,
so then that played a role in him not getting the Tonight Show. But he turned out just fine. Yeah, Letterman turned out fine and was very
I think so.
successful.
It's kind of funny, ironic that Letterman and Conan both had like got into Leno's crosshairs and both lost the Tonight Show to Leno. And guess who we're still talking about?
Yeah.
Like Leno, we're like, what's he doing today? Whereas Conan, I mean, what is Conan not doing today? He's hosting the Oscars again. He has a very successful podcast. And Letterman is in a pseudo retirement where he just shows up on random talk shows because he
Hmm.
feels like it.
Yeah.
He's become Bill Murray of talk shows.
Yeah. There was an article and the headline just said that Letterman said that he likes being on TV. That's just simply what he said. He showed up on the QVC show that Busy Phillips does. So,
Yes, QVC has a show that does something other than sell you stuff you didn't know you needed.
yeah. Well, and then there's the tie-in with Joan Rivers, who we talked about earlier, and on Hacks, that character, she's selling things on QVC. So that's an
True,
interesting
Meryl
tie-in.
Marcoux was on Hacks.
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel was
Yeah.
on Hacks.
Yeah.
We need to do an entire episode on Hacks.
Yeah. It's really, yeah, it's a great show. I guess, yeah, they have another season, but hopefully it's not another year or whatever. Sometimes they spread out their seasons quite a bit, but yeah, it's yet another great show on HBO Max. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the streaming stuff. It's you wait 2 years, you get 6 episodes. You wait another 2 years, you get another 6 episodes, and
Yeah.
it's sort of like, okay, like how much did I like this show? Am I going back? Am
Yeah.
I just letting it go? Like what's going on? Um,
Yeah, like dating
there's
back to The Sopranos, people really it drove them crazy because they had to wait a long time between the seasons of The Sopranos. But yeah, I was going to mention you brought up Conan, and yeah, you're a huge Conan fan, and so am I. But I noticed that on YouTube, there was an interview with Richard Zoglin, the author of this book that we're talking about. But yeah, but the thing is, it was not about that book. Richard Zoglin wrote a book about Bob Hope, simply called Hope, and Conan did a few of these programs that are all on YouTube, and
is this
it's
the
called
serious jibber jabber?
yeah, serious jibber jabber. There's like, I don't know, 15 or 20 of them. But yeah, so he did an interview with Zoglin all about Bob Hope. And so that's an interesting interview. I was hoping it would be about Comedy on the Edge just because I saw this on
Yeah.
YouTube. But I mean, the Bob Hope book would be interesting to read too. I mean, because that's a whole nother can of worms. I mean, talking about Bob Hope and the ups and downs in his life, and there's the tie-in with Johnny Carson, and there's
Yes.
a lot of people don't know about the early days of Bob Hope and the
Yeah.
road pictures that he did with Bing Crosby, and so Woody Allen said that he was highly influenced by Bob Hope. The early career of Bob Hope. I mean, people
Okay.
like my age, people who are my age, remember Bob Hope from the 1980s or
Yeah.
90s when he was a very old man. He was very feeble.
The
Johnny
USO tours.
yeah, and Johnny Carson got frustrated with him because he couldn't see very well. He couldn't move very well. He'd come out on Johnny Carson's show, and he was either in his 70s or 80s at that point. And
He lived to 100, and I remember
yeah,
NBC celebrating his birthday, and my
yeah,
parents were like, "I thought he was dead." Apparently
yeah,
not. Like, why are we celebrating his 100th
yeah.
birthday? Oh, okay.
So Conan has some good he has some good references remembering Bob Hope and Johnny Carson for that matter. I mean, Johnny Carson came to The Simpsons to tape a
Oh,
voice
yes.
episode, and so Conan had remembrances of him. Conan went to Bob
The
Hope's
wrong
house.
directions.
Yep. Yeah. He gave Johnny Carson the wrong direction to go out of there. So but yeah, Bob Hope was like, he was all about his career. His career was all that mattered. And, he really wouldn't talk about anything else. And he'd go on these shows, and people would try to, get him to open up a bit and show his personality. And no, he'd just go into his bit and he'd read his cue cards. And
Yeah.
so people got frustrated with Bob Hope because of that. But he had a lot of power at NBC. So like back in the day when he had a show that he was going to promote, he had carte blanche to show up on Johnny Carson's show, and Johnny Carson had to let him on the show. He had a lot of power there.
And he probably had to be with Johnny. There's no Doc
Yeah,
substituting for Bob Hope's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
appearances.
Well, and another, I think I sent you this link. A great serious jibber jabber that Conan did was about The Simpsons. And since he was a writer
Oh.
on The Simpsons, he had a couple of the other Simpsons writers. And so three or four of the Simpsons writers all sitting around the table just having remembrances of writing for that show. And a lot of them came out of Harvard. I mean, some of them wrote for Letterman too. Some of the Simpsons writers wrote for Saturday Night Live. So
Yes.
there's a rich history there to discover. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the serious jibber jabbers, at least not any of them in a very long time. But I remember that being an elaborate ploy to get Robert Caro on the show. and it didn't work. Instead, Caro went on Colbert, and it was just became this taunting Conan thing because Conan's a huge fan of his like three Caro's three-part 1,500-page Eisenhower
Oh, okay.
biography.
Yeah, Conan
And
is a big, he's a presidential historian and historian in general. He loves the Civil
yes,
War and anything tied in with history. That's a lot of what he studied at Harvard was history
yes, and
as
literature.
yeah.
So, and he did eventually. Is it? I want to say it's Robert Caro, but it could be. I'm not sure if it's Richard or Robert because I'm not.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It is Robert Caro. I was right. Um, did eventually show up on Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
Hmm. Okay.
So Conan got his dream. Just Robert Caro was just messing with him for a few years.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So the yeah, serious jibber jabber was interesting because there were like long form, really great interviews and just plain black background. It was like Charlie Rose or
yes,
even
the
like the
round
old
table.
yeah, even like the old days of Tom Snyder with the Tomorrow Show. So just the long form like what he does on his podcast.
Yeah, it might have even been like dipping his toe into it, even though that was not what was being said at the time. At the time, it was the elaborate ploy for Robert Caro.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and
I
it's the more serious side of Conan. It's not him and doing anything silly. It's showing his strength as an interviewer.
Right, and the fact that he is so fluent and such a serious student of history, because which we saw at the Mark Twain Awards, where
Yeah.
he gave that speech, and it wasn't him telling jokes, it was him explaining, like, yeah, I know everyone is mad about what's going on in the world, but this is like why we are here tonight because we want to represent what Mark Twain stood for
Hmm.
rather than just either like outright bashing the government, which I mean that's what a lot of people are doing these days, but it was much more pointed and trying to make a point rather than, oh, I'm just annoyed at everything and I can't figure out how to say that in a way where people understand. So that was my earring is stabbing me. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Um, so that was an- another time when we saw the serious side of Conan, even though that was also a little bit funny because he was trying to lighten the mood a bit, but
Hmm.
just making points. And it's it's just fascinating how like where Conan ended up at this point. And I want to keep going back to Carson because that is so much. Let me just take it out. It will stop poking me now.
Hmm.
So it was just like with Carson, Jerry Seinfeld was like, when I get on the show, I have to make sure like I have enough material to sustain it because you can't just show up, do your best 5 minutes, and be like, that's all I have. Like you need,
Hmm.
if you do well, you will be asked to come back within a few weeks,
Hmm.
and you could be making 12 appearances in 2 years and you need enough material. And once you say that material on Carson, no one's coming to the club to hear you say them. It's not
Hmm.
like a Bob Hope situation where I don't even know how this happened, where it's like going to your favorite musician and you're disappointed if you don't hear the greatest hits.
Hmm.
Which
Yeah.
they,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That's
well,
that's a big.
it's kind of like with George Carlin and the seven dirty words, the seven words you can't say on television, where it's like if you see George Carlin and he does not do a variation of that bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sometimes comedians do get to the point where they have an iconic bit like that. But I think that a lot of comedians probably uh, kind of envy the musicians. Yeah, because if you see musicians, I mean, and back in the day, if Led Zeppelin was performing, you wanted to hear Stairway to Heaven
Yeah.
or whatever it may be. Yeah, you want to hear their biggest hits. But yeah, so many times comedians, yeah, they can't do that unless they come up with, yeah, really an iconic bit, like you said. And then also, I mean, when I think of the 70s and comedy in the 1970s, you think of Freddie Prinze and what he
Yes.
with the his appearance
Chico and the
with,
Man. He burned
yeah,
brightly,
Carson.
but for a
Yeah.
short period of time.
Yeah, because he went on Johnny Carson's show and his first time on there just knocked it out of the park. Sammy Davis Jr. was also on the show, and people may not know that Sammy Davis Jr. was half African American, but also half Puerto Rican.
Yes.
Freddie Prinze was doing a lot of Puerto Rican jokes. Sammy Davis Jr. is just over on the couch, just completely cracking up and laughing, and he thought he was so great. And supposedly the very next day after Johnny Carson's show, Freddie Prinze gets this call from NBC. They're like, "You are incredible. We're giving you your own sitcom."
And
So
he was
that was
only
the kind.
20 years old at the
He
time.
was really very young. Yeah, very young. But it was just, yeah, it was too much for him. He got into drugs and ended up, yeah, dying from a drug overdose. But very sad story, but that just shows the power that Johnny Carson's show had, and literally an overnight success. The very next day, he gets his own sitcom. Yeah,
Right. And Jerry Seinfeld at Catch a Rising Star, I don't remember the guy's name, which tells you how much Carson mattered because if you didn't do well, you were forgotten. And
hmm
like this guy did extremely well, but didn't have enough material to keep up a career and stay in the public eye to that extent. So he eventually went on to a career. It was like middle tier, but it
hmm
wasn't like everyone was hitting him up because he just couldn't sustain that level because he went on with his best 5 minutes and had nothing else.
yeah. Oh, and yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of comedians out there that are they're able to tour, they're able to make a decent living. Maybe they're making 100,000 or even or 2 or 300,000, and some of them are they're playing theaters, but they're not making millions. They're not the next
No.
Jerry Seinfeld, but there are some comedians out there. I mean, if you can, yeah, if you're a headliner and you can tour and you can sell out pretty decent sized venues, you can make some decent money, but you're not going to be making in the millions.
No. I don't think most of them make the millions. And I think, well, like even those that we are household names, I don't think most of them make the millions, especially if they just stick to stand up. Like you
Yeah.
have your Kevin Harts, your Chris Rocks, your I get like Ali Wong, Sebastian
Mhm.
Maniscalco.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's really good. I mean,
Yeah, like they've become
Jim
big.
Gaffigan too. Jim Gaffigan has quite a bit of success. I mean, well,
That's
he's
true.
toured with Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah.
True. Jim Gaffigan and his hot pockets. That's his famous bit.
Yeah. Oh,
That and
yeah.
how pale he is.
Yeah, people are they will want to hear the Hot Pockets joke, and he does really well. But yeah, when you're somebody like Jerry Seinfeld or even Ray Romano, I mean, yeah, or Tim Allen, when you get your sitcom, like when you get a sitcom and it's on the air for many years and you get those residuals coming in, that's where the serious money comes into play.
Right. And while Jerry Seinfeld was always a stand up at heart, with Tim Allen and Ray Romano, once they became famous for acting and being on television, they let stand up go because for a lot of stand ups, it was about getting that TV show at
Hmm.
that time, whether it was you wanted a sitcom or you wanted a talk show. Whereas now we saw with Taylor Tomlinson,
Hmm.
she walked away from a regular TV gig in order to continue her stand up because she enjoyed it more, and I think she might have been making more money doing it because
Hmm.
she's a big name right now.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of hers, but you gotta respect what she is doing and the fact that she is in her 20s still and is a household name if you have someone who is in her target audience in your
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, she realized that really her love is the stand-up comedy, and that I don't know, that After Midnight show, it was weird because it was so scripted, and
Yes.
I wanted it to be more like Chelsea Handler had a good show, or a few years ago David Spade had a show that was on Comedy Central, Lights Out with David Spade.
Yes.
I wanted it to be more like those type of shows.
I find that whenever an American network tries to do a British type panel show type show, they do
Mhm.
it wrong because they make it like it's Hollywood Squares, where we're going to give you pre written stuff and you're just going to go off of that and it'll all work out. And then it doesn't because you can't react in the moment when if someone says a line in a way that was unexpected,
Mhm.
or if someone's like, I have something to follow up with that's not scripted because everyone's clinging to a script that shouldn't be there. Whereas with Hollywood Squares, the like the jokes and the answers were scripted because of the type of game show it was, but the celebrities could make up their own joke if they were quick enough.
No.
Like with Paul Lind, I'm sure some of it was written, but a lot of it felt like that's Paul, that's who he is,
Yeah.
and we don't get that. Um, with that, after midnight, I saw some of the clips online. I never had the desire to watch an entire show. With Have I Got News for You on CNN, I've seen clips. Another thing, don't have a desire. The original British one is a half hour. They extended it to an hour on CNN.
Mhm.
No idea why. Like, most of these shows do not need to be an hour.
No.
Um,
Well, they pack them full of commercials too, so that's another aspect.
right, exactly. But you can record it and then fast forward through the commercials. But
Oh, sure.
I
Yeah.
wonder what the actual show length would be without commercials.
Yeah. Not
Like,
very much.
I wonder if it would only be a half hour or if we would be at that 40-minute mark.
Yeah, I don't
I
know,
don't
and
know. And I
I don't know if there's regulations as far as that, as far as how many commercials you can have, or I
There
don't know.
not I don't think there is on cable TV, otherwise we wouldn't have so many infomercials in the middle of the night.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but I really like for me as a fan of these panel shows, of British and Australian panel shows, I just want someone to come and do it right.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it's the cultural differences, though letting comedians do their thing isn't shouldn't be like a cultural difference to me.
Hmm.
Like I get like late night talk shows, we do export hours, but they don't really take hold in other countries in the same style as American talk shows, with the exception of Harold Schmidt in Germany,
Hmm.
which have you seen
No.
his
Mm-mm.
okay. So Letterman has joked, and Conan. I actually was watching Conan's appearance on it earlier this morning. that Letterman's joke was like the guy in Germany who does my show, and it's just sort of like the graphics are similar, the music is similar. The set is an exact replica, only scaled down.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just bizarre because Harold Schmidt took one look at Letterman's show and went, or maybe like the network went like, I want that, and then he literally stole some of Conan's bits, like when they would drive and then the bullet holes
Oh, okay, yeah.
from late night, like some of those bits he took, and it's just very bizarre watching this very German show that took a bunch of stuff from American shows. And if you watch the Conan interview, you can hear Conan very clearly. So you're still getting half of it if you don't understand German at all. But it's very strange to me where Harold is not speaking much English. And when he is speaking English, the words that he chooses seem odd to me. Like he's speaking German, and then he's like, the audience reacts. And it's like, wait,
Hmm.
react is a word in English, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. So was that a show that Conan went on as a
Yes.
guest for one of his travel shows?
No, well, I'm gonna say yes, but for late night. This is from, I want to say, the 90s.
Oh, okay.
I can
Okay.
send you the link.
Okay.
We'll swap links after
Yeah.
the show. Um, so like we have exported some of it, and I know the Tonight Show is now being adapted for another country. I want to say Malaysia, or it's some country where I'm like,
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Not one of the first ones I would have thought,
Hmm.
but okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about Conan with that show in Germany because
Yeah,
with his HBO Max show, he has gone
yeah,
on some he has gone on some shows in other countries, like in Mexico City. He went on a Mexico City show, and then he incorporated that into his
yes.
travel show.
Yeah, this is not that because it's from late night. It was one of those where he went to another country, they did a few like funny things, and then they came home and then showed the package.
Hmm.
Um, I haven't seen the full episode, so I don't know if it's like we went to Germany and did a show in Germany, like Letterman went to London and did a show in London for a week.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it, he definitely went there and they were hanging out. And like the bit of him with Harold Schmidt that they showed on late night. It's so bizarre to me because Harold clearly misread Conan because the way it is cut after the interview, Harold comes to talk to Conan, and his English is clearly limited, but he decides to tell Conan because they were filming in Cologne, like Conan, like Cologne, number one city gay, and Conan's just like, what?
Hmm.
And then this being Conan, he immediately finds a gay bar and is like dancing with drag queens.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just like, I mean, that's nice, but what? I
Yeah.
think you've misread this situation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I don't know. I did take some notes. I was going to look at what I wrote down in terms of this book. It was kind of a brief book. It wasn't really
Yes,
long. I think people who really want to know about comedy in general, and especially the history of comedy, there's a book that's just called The Comedians by Cliff
yes,
Nesterhoff. Kliph is his first name, Cliff Nesterhoff. And he's really an expert. I mean, he goes back to vaudeville and he's an expert on the whole. wide range of comedy. Yeah, going
Yes.
back to like the 1920s. So 100 years of comedy, and he's been a panelist on various CNN shows, and like when they did the CNN look at late night television, he was one of the panelists on there. So his book is really outstanding. So it's much more of a comprehensive look at the
Okay.
whole wide scope of comedy over the decades. So he's really knowledgeable.
Yes, with Comedy at the Edge, it's more of a book where like, oh, I'm interested in this, so let me see if I want to learn more about it rather than a deep dive. There are certainly
Yeah,
books that are deep dives. There are also other books where they complement like the Comedy Store, which gives you more about the strike and those people. Um, there's not really much overlap, but I'm also reading Improv Nation, which, if you want to know about the history of improv and how a lot of those people became actors, and there are names you would know in there. Like Mike Nichols, I did not realize before he became a director and directed The Graduate, he was known for comedy and
yeah,
as a
Nichols and May.
performer.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, with Elaine May. Yeah, oh yeah, and improv is fascinating because there's the whole Saturday Night Live tie-in, and I mean a lot of them came out of
yeah,
Second City in Chicago, and you look at the Groundlings. I mean
right,
Pee Wee Herman, aka Paul Rubens,
yes,
coming out of the Groundlings. Cassandra Peterson was there, went on to become Elvira. So
right,
Phil Hartman, yeah, just the history of the Groundlings is really fascinating.
right. This book is about 250 pages, whereas the ones that are super in depth tend to be 600 pages
Mhm.
easily. Um,
Yeah,
and some of them can get into minute details that you don't care about. Others, it's just because they are covering so much ground. So
yeah,
you
and I
want to
don't know.
look at reviews before you dig
Oh
into one
yeah,
of those.
and Zoglin's book about Bob Hope. I don't know if it's 200 pages, if it's 500 or 700 pages. I don't know, but um, that might be interesting to yeah
Yeah,
to check
let's.
that one out. But um, yeah, I was just gonna see what also it well also in the book it talked about how female comedians had a lot of
Yes,
changes.
we
Yeah,
completely forgot about that. That is a huge problem. And
yeah.
yeah, the Bob Hope book is 576 pages. So that
Okay.
is a tome, and I'm sure you will learn everything about Bob Hope in that book.
Yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
going back to the Comedy Store and the Belly Room
Yeah.
with the female comics, and you had Elaine Bougler,
Hmm.
who didn't have the big career that the men had. I believe Roseanne is mentioned briefly in the book.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna
Yeah,
look at
Roseanne
the
had
chapter.
had some good appearances with Johnny Carson in the 80s, and so then that led to her getting her own sitcom, and
Yes.
people were they were critical of Johnny Carson for a couple reasons. Number one, the music.
Yeah.
Some people felt like Johnny Carson had too much jazz on his show. He didn't have a whole lot of rock stars, but that was his interest. His interest was jazz, especially the big band like Buddy Rich, and so he had him on there a lot. And also, people were critical of Johnny Carson because he didn't have a lot of female comedians on his show,
Yeah, he would
but he
have like
did.
one a year.
Yeah, I mean, he had Roseanne, he had Ellen DeGeneres really had her big break on there. One that I really liked. She never became a huge star, but he had Wendy Liebman. She
And
was a
Judy
really funny.
Canuta.
Yeah. She was on there. Rita Rudner is
Mhm.
another one. A few times he had Paula Poundstone on his show. So he had a few. He had a few female comedians, but yeah. I mean Johnny was prejudiced. I think towards male comedians. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Well, and of
And
course Joan Rivers. I mean Joan Rivers really had her big break on his show, and
right, she
then
was a permanent guest host until
yeah,
the whole
yeah.
debacle where she went over to Fox.
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
tell Johnny ahead of time. He found out from
yeah,
the press and then banned her for life, and she didn't appear again until Jimmy Fallon
yeah,
invited her, and then she passed away shortly
yeah,
after that appearance.
yeah. She did. Yeah, she never appeared during the Jay Leno years. He banned her from the show just like Johnny Carson did. Yeah. And so then that comes full circle to what we were talking about as far as Hacks and Marvelous
Mhm.
Mrs. Maisel and kind of the yeah the tie-in with Joan Rivers there. But yeah, I think that was pretty much all I had in terms of my notes in terms of this book. But yeah, as you said, it's a book that just kind of yeah it touches on some things. But if you really want to take a deep dive, yeah, Nesterhoff's book is better. And just yeah, sometimes when these 200-page books come out, they're disappointing. Like there was one on Johnny Carson that came out earlier this year. It was just simply called My Friend Johnny.
Yeah,
It
I
was
have it back there.
yeah, so it was 200 pages, which is not a long book, but only like one third of it was about Johnny Carson. The rest of it was about other celebrities that this guy met, and
I'm not even
so
sure
it
a
was just
third of it was about Johnny Carson.
yeah,
Like,
it's
it was just that it's basically a memoir of this guy's life. He happened to know Johnny
yeah,
Carson. Apparently, they were friends.
yeah. Yeah, they lived in the same neighborhood in Malibu. Actually, David Letterman was in the same neighborhood in Malibu too. And yeah, this guy was not a showbiz person. He was a business tycoon, and he had worked in software as head of a software company and made a lot of money. So he was able to hang out with a lot of celebrities. But that book was disappointing because it was just a lot of name dropping and not very in depth as far as Johnny Carson. Yeah, they played tennis together, they went out to eat together and stuff like that, but it was disappointing. But later this year, we will have the book from Mark Malkoff, which should be excellent. I have no doubt that that will be outstanding because he did the Carson podcast for many years, and he's really the preeminent Carson expert. He and Bill Carter, I mean, the two of them, and both of them are involved with latenighter.com. And anybody who
Yes.
likes late night TV really should check out latenighter.com because that has a lot of really interesting stuff. But I'm sure that yeah, Mark Malkoff's Johnny Carson book will be very in depth. I think it'll be right up there with the Henry Bushkin book because Bushkin really knew Johnny Carson very well too, and so he had some good insights in his book.
Yes, and even though Henry Bushkin and Carson had a falling out, the book isn't completely like, this is all the bad stuff Johnny Carson did to me. He was like, Bushkin was clearly hurt by what was, what had happened, the falling out, but there were got a lot of good years there.
Hmm. Oh yeah, he was very complimentary in a lot of the parts of the book, and nobody's perfect. I mean, let's face it. I mean, yeah, Johnny was great on TV, but people know that he was not a great husband. He was not a great father, and he
No.
said, "Hey, if I would have dedicated my all of my time to being a great husband and a great father, as as I did with the show, he would have been much better and more successful." And yeah, he dedicated all of his time and energy to the show, and that was true, I think, with a lot of men of that generation. But
Yeah.
he was not perfect, and nobody is perfect, and he had his challenges. But Bushkin, yeah, he had ups and downs with him, but he greatly admired Johnny as an entertainer. There's no doubt about it.
Yes. Whereas my friend Johnny is more like, oh yeah, I knew Johnny so well, and it's a lot of stuff we already knew.
Yeah, and the author of that book was critical. He has been critical of Bushkin because he felt like Bushkin's
Yes.
book was too negative.
Yes. That he mentions that. Who is the author?
Howard Smith, I think his name is. He
Yes.
he did the Carson podcast. So all the Carson podcasts are still online. So yeah, if you just want to Google Carson podcast Howard Smith, he does have an interview on there, and it's interesting. It's good.
So save yourself the book and go seek out that podcast, I guess.
Yeah, seek out the Carson podcast and yeah, wait for Mark Malkoff's book. I think it's October when his book comes out, but I have no doubt that it will be outstanding and really in depth and reveal a lot of things about Johnny Carson that people did not know.
And you can pre-order that on Amazon already.
Yeah,
You've been able to for months.
yeah, definitely.
And do you, I think you said you have we've covered everything in your notes, but is there
Yeah.
anything
So
else?
no, no, I guess not. It's just yeah, it's always interesting to talk about comedy in general. And yeah, I think it's good that we touched on that National Comedy Center in Jamestown because that
Yes.
is really a fascinating place to visit. Anybody who's a fan of comedy and I just love museums myself, but yeah, museum dedicated to comedy, it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I want to go back, but I they would have to change some like a lot more than they have before I go back because I went only like 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't know if they change if they're gonna I'm sure they're going to change out some of the exhibits, but yeah, eventually they probably will get something in place of the Johnny Carson exhibit. Also, when I was there, they had a Carl Reiner exhibit, but most museums will, yeah, they'll change out their exhibits every so often. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm waiting for that. They also have festivals there where I Jon Stewart was there recently.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, they get some pretty big names performing there. Yeah.
There's not much else to do there, but
No, there's not. No, and yeah, Jamestown is yeah, it's a town that has had its struggles. It's had its ups and downs, and I think that it's had some economic struggles. But yeah, hopefully that museum helps in terms of bringing people to the area.
yes. And thank you, Rob, for coming and talking about Comedy on the Edge by Richard Zoglin. You can get this wherever you get your books if you're interested in that. Until next time, I'm Allison Lips, and remember, television is a medium neither rare nor well done. Bye.
Bye bye.